Okay, so quasi-concavity and quasi-convexity. Quasi means not, basically. It's the easiest example is in English quasi-passive voice, okay, which is not properly passive, that kind of a scenario. So here also in a concave or a convex curve, which is not in its entire domain, it is not concave or convex. That's what basically this quasi terms mean. But obviously then there a confusion that arises in our mind is that then are we talking about a convex or concave or convex curve, or are we talking about something else? Okay, but that confusion will be cleared as we go along. The relevance of this topic in optimization or for the utility maximization or cost minimization is very simple. It is that if the utility function that we worked with, okay, so ux1 x2 equal to u, so this is a three variable function, right? U x1 and x2. So if this three variable function is quasi concave, then second order condition of maximization of maximization is automatically satisfied. That's what basically this means. Now, this tells us a lot of things at one go. What does it tell us? First of all, that SOC, this condition, second order condition of maximization, it depends on the value of border Hessian determinant, right? So that means that the quasi concavity, we can take a decision on whether a function is quasi concave or not based on the sign of bordered Hessian. So that much is trivially clear to us. But when I am looking at bordered Hessian, it involves fx, fy, fxx, fyy, fxy, which is equal to fyx. Now that tells us that if I am going to talk about or ascertain the quasi-concavity of some function using this bordered Hessian, which we will do at a later stage, then there are some requirements. Actually, there is one requirement, and the requirement is that the function must be continuously differentiable up to the second order. Okay, because we need to differentiate, we need to find all of these four. So obviously the function has to satisfy that it is continuously differentiable up to the second order. So we can actually do this. First of all, we are allowed to do this. Okay, so that obviously is the requirement. Now, obviously there are functions. So what about the functions which are quasi-concave or otherwise, that is quasi-convex, okay, but does not satisfy this requirement. Does not satisfy this requirement. So what about them? Okay. So first of all, we'll proceed like any other topic. So first of all, we'll take a look at the geometric definition. Okay. First, we'll take a look at the geometric definition, and then slowly we'll move into the differentiability related definition. Okay, so that's how we will proceed. And obviously, in the middle, we will have a algebraic definition. Algebraic definition. So what does this mean? This means given a function, okay, if I am asked this question of whether this is quasi-concave or quasi-convex, the geometric definition is always applicable, but at times, as we know, that drawing the diagram becomes a little bit difficult if the domain contains, if the domain is really huge. Okay, and then checking algebraic definition is always available, but in some cases it can be a little bit laborious. So that's why we are a fan of this different condition related to differentiability. But obviously, given a function, we have to first check whether it satisfies this requirement or not. If it does, then we can go to bordered Hessian, and if it does not, then applying algebraic definition will be the idea, will be a better idea definitely than geometric definition, because there is a risk of drawing the wrong diagram and reaching the wrong conclusion. But obviously, as a method, in terms of visualization, this is definitely the best, but not always really suitable. Okay, because most of the time we deal in 3 dimension, and in 3 dimension, drawing a proper the proper geometric space is quite difficult. Anyway, so this is the thing. And obviously, regarding the relevance, we'll look at a schematic diagram at the end of all this, where we will relate this second order condition, this quasi concavity, and the optimum point that we have found in utility maximization, and we will try to find under cost minimization later. Okay, all right. So basically what we are trying to do is we are trying to answer this question: how quasi concavity or quasi convexity as a feature of a function is related to the problem of constraint optimization. Okay. Okay. So let's start. So as I said, that constraint optimization okay, in constraint optimization, we have this alternative, the alternative against SOC is quasi concavity for a maximum and quasi convexity for a minimum. Okay, so we have this alternative. Now, one thing that we have to understand before we move into what the definition is this: quasi concavity or quasi convexity, so to say, or quasi convexity in the bracket, is a weaker condition than our favorite concavity or convexity. Okay. Why? Why this is so? This is because there is a reason, because the sign definiteness, of D to Z is required only for those DXIs okay, which satisfies dg equal to 0 and not for all dxi. So as you have seen in the diagram at the very first day of work, dealing with this topic, that when we are finding the optimum point in a constrained optimization, we have necessarily restricted the domain in a small zone. So that means all of this condition of quasi-concavity or convexity, it is being searched in that narrow section of the function. Okay, so obviously that means we are ignoring what is happening to the function beyond that point. Okay, so beyond that point, the function can have any other shape, and it is because of this, obviously, this quasi-concavity or quasi-convexity becomes a weaker condition, and the space is restricted by obviously this dg equal to 0 condition. Okay, so now we will look into the geometric characterization. We will look into some diagrams, and then we are going to identify which of them is quasi-concave, which of them is quasi-concave, etc. Okay, so let's look at 3 diagrams. Just to remember, much like we had strict convexity and strict concavity in unconstrained optimization, here also we will have strict quasi-concavity and strict quasi-convexity. Okay, so this is one diagram. The next one is kind of symmetrically opposite with respect to the, sorry, this will be Z. This is not Y, this will be Z. Okay. All right. So as I said, kind of symmetrically opposite. So here we'll name them U dash, M dash, then N dash and V dash. And then there is a third figure, which is different in look. So that will be so in this linear section we'll have U and V double dash and then M and N double dash. Okay, so these are the 3 diagrams through which, using the definition or geometric of characterization, we will identify which one of them is quasi-concave and which one of them is quasi-convex. So let's proceed. Okay. So this is the definition. Let U and V be any 2 distinct points in the convex domain of a function f, and let line UV in the domain. As I said, we'll be looking into a section. So line UV in the domain give rise to Mn on the graph. On the graph. Okay, so here UV given this portion Mn, U dash V dash generated M dash N dash, and here U double dash V double dash generated M double dash and N double dash. Okay. All right. So now we'll write it together. So F is said to be quasi-concave. F is said to be quasi-concave in bracket quasi-convex if all points on arc Mn other than M and N. So this is very important, other than M and N. Okay. Okay, so if all points on arc Mn, so this is arc Mn, here M dash N dash, and here M double dash N double dash. Other than M and N are higher than or equal in, so I'm going to erase these three lines, first three lines, okay? Okay, so higher than or equal in height to point M. Obviously, this goes for quasi-concave, this higher than or equal in height. So in bracket, we will say for quasi-convex, lower than or equal to, and now it will become point N, right? Symmetrically opposite. Okay, so this is our quasi-concave and quasi-convex together. Now we will introduce the strictness, and how will I define strict quasi-concavity or strict quasi-convexity? I will simply erase this option of being equal. Okay. Okay. So in case of strict quasi-concavity or in bracket quasi-convexity, equality is ruled out. Equality is ruled out. So in case of quasi-concavity or quasi-convexity, basically what we are saying that if it is, so let's take quasi-concave, we can imagine the symmetrically opposite in our head, right? So when it is quasi-concave, then I'll take an arc like Mn, selecting U and V because I need only a portion, and I'll see whether the points other than M and N, and that is very important, okay, whether the points other than M and N are higher or lower or equal to, if I'm applying the weak or weak condition, and if I'm talking about strict condition, then I'll ruled out equality. Okay, so that much is there. All right. Now, obviously, now we can identify these three diagrams as, look at this. So here M in arc is generated, and other than M and N, all the points are strictly higher. So this is strict quasi-concave, right? So this is obviously quasi-concave, but strict. Here, does the symmetrically opposite? So we know it. So this is quasi-convex, but strict. Now, what happens here? In M dash N dash, all the points other than M dash N dash are equal to the M dash and also equal to N dash. So if they're equal to both, then we are looking at this line, and just like for concavity and convexity, this line becomes both quasi-concave. So I'll write Q con. Okay, so this line becomes, so line becomes both in weak sense, right? So this portion M double dash and N double dash is both quasi-concave and quasi-convex, but in a weak sense. Whereas these two, this one is strictly quasi-concave and this one is strictly quasi-convex. So the requirement is, I'll separate out an arc and I'll see whether other than the boundary points, all the points inside are higher than or lower than or equal to those boundary points. If higher, then strictly quasi-concave. If lower, then strictly quasi-convex. And if equal, okay, if equal to M, then it is weak quasi-concave. If equal to N, then it is strictly quasi-convex. And if equal to both, then basically we are looking at a straight line which becomes both of which satisfied both the conditions. Okay. All right. So this takes us to a very trivial result. Let's just say, if we can say corollary. So it takes us to a very trivial corollary. Okay, let us write result here. Okay, so what is the result? The result is any strictly quasi-concave bracket quasi-convex. So any strictly quasi-concave quasi-convex, that also is strictly obviously function is quasi-concave or quasi-convex, but converse is not true. Okay. All right. Okay, so now we'll look at a 3D diagram. Okay. Which will give us the more about this geometric characterization. Because as I said that it is 3D, we are actually interested in. So these two diagrams, they have a fundamental structural difference. We'll name a little bit later. The structural difference is that here in these two diagrams, the lower portions are very different looking, right? And that's what changes everything. Okay. So for example, if I take these two portions, okay, if I take the lowest cut, I know. So if I take these two portions, okay, both of them, they are convex portions. So this one is also convex and this one is also convex. And this is something which is missing in this diagram. And that's what makes this diagram to be strict concave. And this is strict quasi-concave. Okay, so that brings in the difference. Now we will look into the arc. Okay, so what about the arc? Okay, so this portion I need to, this is fine, but this portion I need to correct the shape up a little bit because the convexity kind of ends here. Okay, so I'll just correct it a bit. So, okay, so this will go like this and then it will turn. Okay. Yeah, so that's more like it. Yes. So now what is happening is, let's say I'm talking about two arcs, okay, two UVs. So one line is parallel to this x-axis, okay. So I'm taking two different arcs drawn in two different directions. So I'll take even one of them will suffice. So let's take these 2 points in the XY plane, okay. Try to just imagine this. So it will be parallel to x-axis. So u and let's say v. Okay, so these 2 points are at the base. Now if I look at the points m and n, then that m and n will be looking like this, right? M dash and n dash. Sorry, it will be even more strict. So it will be like this. So on the surface of this function, this m dash and n dash will be like this. And that is what makes it a strictly quasi-concave, right? Correct? All right. Wait. Yes. So what was strict convexity? The strict convexity was that all the points are other than m and n will be higher than or equal to m. So in this part, it is strictly higher than m, right? Function is going upward. So that makes it strictly quasi-concave because there is no point which is equal to m. Okay. Okay. So technically speaking, for strict quasi-concavity, we compare it from the lower side, and for that is, in some sense, that is from m dash, and for strict convexity, we compare it from the higher side. So from n. Okay. So this is the difference. Okay. Technically or theoretically, that what you must remember is that this convex portion that I am allowing at the end or at any part of this function, that's what make it quasi-concave. So that's something that we have started with, that quasi means not in the complete domain. Okay. All right. So now uh, we will go to the algebraic definition, okay, and see what it says. Okay. So let's look at the algebraic definition. A function is, so we'll write it in the old fashion. So quasi-concave, quasi-convex, if and only if for any pair of distinct u and v in the convex domain. So much like we have said earlier also, of f, and here comes that part which starts like concavity or convexity, but then the condition becomes entirely different. And for 0 less than theta less than 1, f of v greater than equal to f of u implies f of theta u plus 1 minus theta v. So that's our convex combination. So in case of quasi-concave, it becomes greater than or equal to f of u. And in case of quasi-convex, it becomes less than or equal to f of v. Okay. So that completes our definition, and the simple thing that strict condition is implied by strict inequality. So as long as these inequalities are weak, we are talking about quasi-concave and quasi-convex in a weaker scenario. And if I remove these equality signs, then they become strict quasi-concave or strict quasi-convex. So what are the conditions again? See, let's tally it with the geometric idea. So in geometric idea, we said that there will be u and v, and we have drawn with respect to them m and n. And for quasi-concave, so let's say Q-cave, points will be higher than or equal to, okay, so let's write like this, point will be higher than or equal to m. And for quasi-convex, so let's write Q-vex, for which is lower than or equal to n. And if both sides satisfied, we saw how that looks, right? And if we remove the equalities, then we get the strict conditions. Now look at what we have written in geometry. What we have written in this is this, that basically u generates this point fu. So this m is basically our fu. V generates the point fv. So this n is basically our fv. And then for quasi-concavity or quasi-convexity, we have kept this structure same. So what is this? This is the functional value of the convex combination, right? So that much we can identify. Now a convex combination will always lie between the endpoints. And what are the endpoints? The endpoints are m and n. So by taking the convex combination of u and v and looking for the functional value under this convex combination, we are essentially saying that we are talking about those points in function f which are in between m and n. So basically we are talking about the same thing. And for same thing, the definition remains the same. So this f of over this f value of this convex combination for quasi-concave, it becomes greater than or equal to fu, which is our m, and less than or equal to fv, which is our quasi-convex. So by doing this exercise, we realize that we are talking about essentially the very same thing, right? Okay, so our condition essentially has not changed. Now we will go to three theorems which are connected to all of this, and we'll look at these statements. and then you'll try to understand which one of them is pretty trivial and which one of them is not that trivial. Okay. So what are the theorems? Now you could have said it that that strict quasi-concavity implies quasi-concavity and all that. That's also considered a theorem, but saying that it does not make a point because the result is too easy. Anyways, so let's look at the important ones. Number one is, so these theorems, they are basically the quasi counterpart of the concavity convexity topic, that is unconstant optimization. So the first is that if fx is, so I'm just trying to, we'll write q cave, okay. Obviously you can't write it in exam, so write quasi concave. Okay, so if fx is q cave, because instead of writing too much of this quasi concave and quasi convex, all right. So if fx is quasi concave, that is quasi concave or strictly concave, okay, then minus fx is quasi convex, so qvex, or strictly quasi convex, that is qvex. Now this basically shows us the symmetry that we were talking about, right? Because if you multiply a minus, what happens is suddenly the f curve, which was at that point, up till that point, which was like this, it becomes suddenly this, right? So your m, it changes to n and so on. Okay, so that this as a theorem is pretty trivial. It relies on essentially symmetry, a symmetry that we were talking about when we were drawing those three diagrams. Okay. Okay, now the second theorem is pretty important. It relates concavity and quasi-concavity. Okay, so any concave or convex function is quasi-concave or quasi-convex, right? Because if you are everywhere concave or convex, then obviously in a small portion in your domain, you will obviously be concave and convex, right? So that this is trivial. Any concave or convex function is quasi-concave or quasi-convex. But the converse is not true. As we said, that quasi stands for allowing other than concavity. So definitely the converse will not be true. Okay. To just write that the same result hold under strict conditions. So if I write strictly, 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 and strictly, the sentence will not change. Okay. And third one, which is again trivial, something that we have talked about, is that if fx is linear, that was in the third diagram, okay? So if fx is linear, then it is both quasi-concave and quasi-convex. Okay, so these are the three theorems. So here we basically take the definition, the algebraic definition that we just have taken, and put in a minus, and then we realize this fact that if I take the minus, then the FUFV, they change, okay? So our condition basically changes. This one, as I said, that if a function is concave or convex in its whole domain, it is trivially concave or convex in a portion of that its domain. But obviously, the whole point of saying quasi-concave is that it is not concave beyond a portion. So the converse cannot be true. And this we have seen through diagrams, right? So if this we are talking about, that if this convex combination inside F, it becomes equal to both Fu and Fv. So if that becomes equal, then we are saying that the endpoints U and V and all the points in between, they give rise to same identical F values. So if they give rise to identical F values, definitely we are talking about a straight line. Okay, that which is represented by the third diagram. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now we will look at an alternative definition, a form of alternative definition that we have had in unconstant optimization topic also. Okay, but just before going into that, I'm just going to write a very important result, and this result is a sum of two quasi-concave functions. By that we basically mean a sum of any number of quasi-concave function, right? So two quasi-concave functions is not necessarily quasi-concave. Okay, so a sum of two quasi-concave functions is not necessarily, okay, is not necessarily quasi-concave. Okay, so now we are going to look at three different diagrams again, and we are going to look at an alternative definition of the alternative algebraic definition of a function being quasi-concave or quasi-convex. Okay, so let me just erase this result, and then we are going to draw three diagrams. Okay, so let's just first draw the diagram. Okay. Then we'll take a look at the definition. All right, so now let's take a look at the definition. So what is the definition? A function fx is, remember x can be a vector also, okay, that's okay, is qcave or qvex if and only if, so this is great as a criteria, right? It is if and only if, for any constant k the set So you'll have 2. So this is S greater than, which equals to collection of X. So I'm talking about the domain, collection of X such that fx, so that is our z value. So fx is greater than equal to some k. So this is the first set, and this is s less than. So here it is greater than, that's why s greater than has been here, and so here also it is less than. So we know already, right? X given fx less than equal to k. So for qk, we are talking about, first we are collecting those x given a k for which fx is greater than or equal to k, and for the second one we are talking about those x given a k for which fx are less than or equal to k, and in both the cases we want it to be a convex set. So it's kind of the other way around, right? We want something to be a convex set. So what is that? We want some portion of this domain to be a convex set, because we are talking about x's, right? So that means our s greater than or s less than, they will appear here on the x-axis. Okay, but as you can see, the condition starts with fixing some k, right? So let's fix some k. So let's say this here is our k. Here, this here is our k, and this here is our k. Okay, so that's fine. Now let's take these 2 points. Okay, let's call them A and B. So A and B gives us that part of fx. So that's our fx, right? So that part of fx which is greater than or equal to k. So that means the corresponding x. So that x appears here, right? So if that x is collected, that will be our s greater than or equal to. And as you can see that this is a convex set. So immediately this curve becomes quasi-concave. So this is quasi-concave. Okay. Similarly, in this K, all the fx, okay, given this K, if I collect all the fx which are less than K, so that will be given these 2 points, A dash and B dash. In between, I have all the fx which are less than or equal to K. And if I look at the corresponding x's, which appears here, it generates s less than equal to, which is a convex set. So here I am dealing with a quasi-convex. Okay. So what happens here? Here, if I take K, then let's say this is some x star. Now, it's not true that, so that fx is greater than k beyond this x star, and on the left of x star, fx is less than k, right? Okay. So now, if I collect the points for which fx greater than equal to k is true, okay, then I get this part, which is our s greater than equal to. So now that's convex, right? Again, if I collect this part is less than equal to, that also is convex, right? So this function is both concave and convex, or rather, as we'll say, this function is both quasi-concave and quasi-convex. So let's look at the condition again. First, my task is to fix a k. Then I'll look for fx greater than equal to k and fx less than equal to k. So here we have tried looking for fx greater than equal to k. And then we'll look at the domain that is generated below. And we see that they are convex. So for example, here, fx less than equal to k, okay, that comprises this part and this part, right? Now these two parts, they are not convex. Why? Because the convex combinations of these two extreme points are here. So that is why this function is quasi-concave. Here also I found k, then I've looked for the fx which is above k and fx which is below k, and then I found that for fx below k, it becomes a convex set. So this is quasi-convex. Here, interestingly, I've seen that in both the sides, I have convex sets. So for the third one, it becomes quasi-convex and quasi-concave at the same time. Okay. Now, we will look into two important functions, okay, which are, I mean, kind of decidedly which are quasi-concave and quasi-convex. And they are decidedly so because we have solved utility maximization problem using these two functions, and we have seen how the results come out. So the first function that we are going to look at is z equal to f of x comma y equal to xy. And for this, SOC is satisfied, so we know that this is quasi-concave. The second one is z equal to f of x comma y equal to x minus a whole square plus y minus b whole square. Now this is a variant of x square plus y square with which we have worked. So this is a circle centered at a comma b with radius root z. And we know that SOC fails here. And if we think of it, this basically becomes quasi-convex. Correct? So now in the next session, we are going to look at the diagram of these two, and you're going to understand how algebraically we can say that they are indeed quasi-concave and quasi-convex.